Again, stories all the way back to the beginning. There's three beginning points for different things at three different times. The first time was somewhere in, I'd say 57, 58 maybe. I was like 6, 7 years old, and I heard music on the radio that caught my ear. Before that, it was just like background noise. And there were two kinds of music. There was the music that had piano as the lead in the forefront, and then there was music that had guitars. I had no idea which was which at the time. All I knew is that later I found out that the one I didn't like was the thing called piano, which I'd never seen. And the one I liked was the one called guitar, which I had never seen. So that was sight unseen. My ear liked guitar music. The next point in time was, I guess, when I started high school in '64. There was a teacher there that played guitar, and he decided that he would offer some lessons to a few of his students that they had indicated in class that they had guitars, but they didn't know how to play them. And a little further back from that, when I was like 10, 11, I had moved from the east coast of New Brunswick, where there was nothing to see, to Montreal, where there was so much to see that it was overwhelming to go from a country house surrounded by forests and land and fields and an ocean to a city like Montreal, even in '59, when you had never seen a house more than two stories high before. And downtown Montreal stacked up together. When we came out from the underground, it was like mind-blowing. And it made me sick because of the smog. But anyway, I digress. So back to '64, I put up my hand and said, I have a guitar, and it was a dime store guitar that my Nana had bought me for a Christmas a couple of years before that, when I was much younger, and nearly 10 years, I guess, 7, 8 years. And it had been in a corner for a while because I had it. I made noise on it, drove my parents crazy because I had no idea about tuning. I didn't know there was anything like tuning. All I know is that my guitar didn't sound anything like anything on the radio. And I couldn't make it sound like anything on the radio. And how could you when you haven't got any tuning and you haven't got an idea in your head that there's even a thing called a chord? So I told my mom about this teacher, and I said, can I take a lesson, or a few lessons? And she said, how much is it going to cost? And I said, he wants $5 for an hour on a Saturday morning. So she thought, okay. We were still pretty poorish at that point, but she said okay. So she dug deep and she took $5, I guess, out of her allowance to give to me. So I went for a month, and Saturdays, and I learned the D chord, the A chord, the E chord, the G chord, the C chord. I had no idea there was a B chord. And near the very end, we learned the small F chord. And our exercises or homework was to go home and practice chord changes between like a D and an A and an A and an E and stuff like that between the weeks. And when we got near the end, he started to teach us a song that we could play with those chords. My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. My Bonnie lies over the sea. And he was a finger picking guy. So, you know, hit the roots and then the pick the you know. Um, so I thought that's how you play guitar, because that's what he showed me. And then that was it. I was done. So I had learned those, you know, cowboy chords as I later came to know them. And I would just practice with them even though my guitar went out of tune. So I brought this guitar, this toy guitar, which is like a 1/3 size guitar. It was 7 or 8 years old at the time. The strings were, you know, off the fretboard like that. There's no truss rod in those little toy guitars, made for kids. Um, tuners were, I guess, I didn't know what quality tuners were at that time. I just knew that they turned strings and made noise, you know, changed the pitch. Um, and so that's what I went there with. And the other 4 people showed up with full-size guitars that were reasonably nice looking, and I showed up with this little 1/3 toy guitar. So it was embarrassing to a point, but at least I learned those chords. Then the next point in time was 2010, when I've told you before, I was getting ready to retire in a couple of years, and I started planning ahead. And then the first thing I did in 2010 was I was online and I was looking for, you know, guitars and the like. Um, and since I'd never had an electric guitar, I wasn't looking for an electric guitar. The only guitar I'd ever had was that toy guitar. And oh yes, somewhere around 1969, I bought a full-size guitar, which was a flamenco guitar from Sears. It was, I think, $75 or $175. I can't remember at the time. I think it was about $175. And I was working as a lifeguard that summer at a swimming pool nearby, and I was making some money, so I bought that. And it had nylon strings. My toy guitar had steel strings. Now, I didn't know why it had nylon strings. I just knew that they felt different, they sounded different, and I didn't like them. So I just left them on there, and I played those cowboy chords a little bit, you know, practicing. And then the guitar ended up in its case, and it disappeared in the closet and for a very long time. So back to 2010. 2010, I decided I'm going to buy a guitar. So I now knew there were acoustic guitars, but had amplifiers in them that could be electrified. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get one of those, and I did. And I also decided that I was going to have to buy an amplifier for it, and I did. So the amplifier I bought was an electric guitar amplifier, which was on Kijiji, which is like a Craigslist in the States selling site, and it was 120 bucks. A 60-watt amp. Thought, 60 watt, pretty good. So, yeah, I went over to see the guy. I brought it home, put it in my spare bedroom, which will be my music room in the end. Oh, I didn't have a guitar to plug into it yet, so I'm going, all right. So I went downtown Toronto, and I went to, what was it, Sam the Man or something like that. I don't know, can't remember what it was. And I played a whole bunch of acoustic guitars that day, because they had the house divided into an acoustic side of the house and an electric side of the house. So I went to the acoustic side of the house, and I ended up with this Takamine, which has been seen on my channel a couple of times. It's a Takamine 6-string. I had played a natural one like this, but I didn't want natural, I wanted a black one. And this is an EG531SC, which went out of production a couple of years after I bought it. So when I got it, I had asked them to, you know, set it up. It was like winter 2010. Make sure that it was set up before I took it home, because I had no idea what that meant. So a couple of weeks goes by, they ordered it, and it comes in, I get a phone call. So I go downtown and pick it up, and I bought a case for it, and with the case together with the guitar, I think it cost me about $840 for this guitar. So yeah, my first foray, good chunk of change. And so that means that I had to be serious about this hobby, and I guess it turned out to be. So this one, it tunes well. The tuners on this thing are Takamine branded, die cast, and it has a built-in preamp at the top, which is quite good. It has a built-in tuner as well. This one is the TK40 preamp. They come with different versions of them. And so I got this thing, and I played it acoustically with the cowboy chords that I knew from before. Now I learned the A chord with the 3-finger method, like that. That's what I was taught. And then when I was online looking for stuff, I found, I think it's Justin Guitars. He does it with 2 fingers, where you kind of smash them together if you want to separate them into an A7. Or if you want to use this one to make it a sus4. So I thought that was a great idea. So I learned how to do that. So that's how I make my A chord all the time now. Every so often, depending on what I'm doing, I might grab the one thing, like, but not too much. So when I got home and I got this thing, the strings off the first fret were quite high. I didn't know what they should be. The strings off of the fretboard were quite high. Now you see, they almost look like they're sitting on the frets, but they're not. It's now set up, 3/64ths and 4/64ths across the fretboard, just like my electric guitars. And I learned that from my foray into building my first Telecasters. So I went online to find out, like, how do you do this compared to the electrics that have screws you can do? Well, I found out that you can take the saddle out and sand it down. So I thought, hey, I got sandpaper, I can do that. So I took the strings off, and I took the saddle out, and I found little strips, of some kind of plastics underneath there, 2 of them. And I thought, oh, I wonder what they are. And now I know they're called shims. So I took the shims out, and I put it back together. And I'm going, oh, now the strings are too low, sitting on the frets. So I put one back in. So I think I've got one shim back in there now, and it's been like this ever since. The truss rod has been adjusted. This hasn't been out of the case in at least 2 years until today. And I took it out, and it was only a little bit out of tune on the top 5 strings. The bottom E was right on, the high E. It was right on there. And all the other ones were a little bit lower, I guess due to stretching and whatever. But I mean, just a tiny bit. But these tuners are really nice. They're at least an 18 or a 21 ratio. Very smooth. And the guitar sounds good. These strings are 10 to 46s, which are called extra light, like I was using on my electrics before I switched to 9 to 42s. It came with like 12 to 58s or something like that. Oh my God. It was like, guy wires from tension cables on towers. So eventually, after my foray into electrics, I found out that there was lighter strings, so I went down to 11s. And then I found out there's extra lights, which are like 10 to 6 is just like my electric, so I'm going, that's the ticket, right? I want that. But even on this guitar, a 10 to 46, with this short scaling, I mean the 12th fret is right here, right? Where on an electric guitar, the 12th fret's there, but it doesn't meet the body until here. So you've got all that extra length. The intonation on this is off by a tiny little bit, which apparently it is on most acoustic guitars. And the strings are all flat by a little bit. The E is the closest one. They're all flat, which means that for this length, they're a little bit too long, right? The bridge should have been maybe a nano bit that way for intonation. But, you know, with the height that they normally put on these things, they don't expect anybody to be playing bar chords up here, I guess, on these guitars. So, yeah, I did that. And then when I got it home and I plugged it into that amplifier that I bought, oh crap, feedback like crazy. I couldn't put it on hardly any setting to try to get the amplifying sound out of it, that it didn't feed back, and woo, I have to shut it down. So that was a bummer. Then I found out by more research that, oh, there's such a thing as an acoustic guitar amplifier, which doesn't do that. But then I saw some people, you know, on stage professionals who play acoustic guitar, and they had these blocker dams in their guitars. I usually keep that in there, but I took it off just so I could make it sound acoustic for you. And then I decided that, oh, I need to do something about that, so I can't play it with that amplifier. So I kind of put it in the case and put it away. And it wasn't until sometime later, when I tell you about the next guitar I bought, I also went out and bought my Mustang 3 amplifier. And that is around 2011. So this was 2010. I got the Mustang amplifier in 2011. And with the Mustang amplifier, with the modeling feature that it has, there were some patches that came with it that said acoustic. So I'm going, oh, I should be able to play this on this amplifier, and I can. Right settings. So I've done a couple of songs with this guitar since I started, you know, learning in 2013. They're both Beatles songs. One was Michelle, and the other one was oh, And I Love Her by the Beatles. I haven't never tried cards, okay? If I can manage it, I'm going to put some cards up here to links to those songs. And that'll be a new experience for me. So I started to play this a little bit, and then I was doing more research and checking the internet and YouTube, which I found. Somebody told me about YouTube, and so I thought, oh, electric guitars. Maybe I should get an electric guitar. And then my mind went away from this to electric guitar, which is where the next episode will come up, and where I started with that and how they kind of went together. So this was the first. Let me do this, and it's probably not gonna come out that well on the camera microphone, but I've got the 65 Deluxe with my acoustic patch with reverb and delay. So it goes from so I say so a lot, right? So this. don't have the dam in, so I have to be careful. I also don't have it plugged in. Boom. That's another thing you got to remember on these things, is to unplug them when you're not using them. So here it is, electrified. It also benefited from the experience I had later with the electrics. For me, being able to do a fret leveling job on this thing. These also have the small frets. And I learned how to do edges, and I learned how to do nut. So this basically is set up like an electric now, and it plays very nicely with the 10 to 46s. I haven't seen any 9 to 42s for guitar, but there might be some. So this is it, the first acoustic electric bought for my retirement planning back in 2010. Thanks for hanging in with me. Catch you in the next one with the first electric.